But
Apparently the guy's I don't know if he's a drug dealer, but apparently an addict and lives in this stripped down.
yeah, learn a lot about.
I just drove by there now. There's a bunch
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the North Platte City Council meeting. Here it's Tuesday, March 18th at 5:30 p.m. Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. And I'm calling the meeting officially to order. We have an invocation by Pastor Von Fahrenbrock from the Rock Church. Did I get it right, Von? I'm getting closer every time.
Let's go and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day. And Lord, as we meet tonight, we ask for wisdom and discernment as we go through tonight's agenda. Lord, I do pray just for health and blessings on each of our city council members and our mayor. And Lord, we thank you that we live in a great city where we can meet like this. And we thank you for the blessings that you brought our way. So Lord, may we steward in a way that glorifies you. In your name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Angie, roll call, please.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act of the State of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. Meeting procedure. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and address. Please address the council through the mayor and limit your remarks. We respect our city employees. We request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired at a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. Consent agenda. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. 1A, approve the minutes of March 4, 2025. B, place on file the treasurer's report for February 2025. C, approve the application by Big Red Liquor at the Barn for a special designated liquor license on April 5, 2025 from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. at the D&N Event Center, 501 East Walker Road for a patron party. D, approve the application by Platte Bar Inc. for a special designated licenses on June 27th and 28th, 2025 from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. at the American Legion Hall, 2020 East 4th Street for a Masons gathering. Item E, send application of Royal Walk for Class 1 liquor license, beer, wine, distilled spirits on sale only for their location at 1318 South Chestnut Street to the Nebraska Liquor Commission with no recommendation. Item F, authorize the mayor to execute health and accident contracts for the city's self-insuring health and accident plan beginning April 1, 2025.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, less item number or letter F.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Reeker, second by Garrick for items A through E and pulling item F. Calling the question on the motion. Items A through E are approved. Mr. Reeker, item F.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In our discussions the other day, we talked about IVF and NAPRO technology, and I just was wondering if, Lane, had you found anything out on that?
I did not. Tanner is in the audience. Tanner, do you have anything to add to our discussions?
Tanner Patera, 3821 Sugarberry Court, with Hub International, co-broker on the health insurance plan. Ed, Spencer was looking into, I mean, the language in the contract for in vitro and for, like we talked about, we're talking about a lifetime limit for IVF for an employee or an employee's family that, sorry, if that's me, that wants to do it, it's $15,000 limit. We use the standard IVF contract language that's in almost every reinsurance contract. And I know you sent over laying forward your email a little earlier today
Right.
on that language, and Spencer and I were digging into it to review. So I don't have a definitive answer. I mean, we need to do a little research because based on the quick glance I took at it, I mean, the health insurance companies are going to want to review and approve items that have been clinically tried and tested. So no health insurance plan covers, I mean, trials. So if this is not a tried and approved method, I don't know if the stop loss contract would approve. I mean, the city can add whatever we want in the contract, but if it's not to the standard, the stop loss contract wouldn't approve it, and the city would just have to spend the money if we add it. I mean, and it's not a covered portion of the stop loss contract.
What do you mean by approved, Tanner? I guess I don't understand what that means.
Well, I mean, the stop loss, as a self-insured health insurance program, we can cover certain things that we want and don't want. You have to follow the Affordable Care Act, but not everything falls into that guidance. So if you add something that is outside the norm of what is considered standard health coverage, the stop loss reinsurance policy can choose not to cover that in some situations. We put in contract language that's called mirroring language, so they have to agree to cover everything that's in the standard health insurance program that we have. But if we're going to amend anything, they still have the option to review that and discuss it.
Okay, is that something that can be changed after we make our vote tonight or not?
Well, I mean, the vote tonight is to renew the stop loss contract. The vote tonight has no bearing on contract language. It's, hey, we're going to renew everything. I mean, if we amend it, there's a potential that if we move forward with that, the $15,000 that's allowed for the lifetime limit, if we amend to the program that you've suggested, might not be added to the acclimator for people's specific deductible. So if I can't remember off the top of my head what employee specific deductible is for the plan to get reimbursement, we'll just say it's $100,000. If the stop loss doesn't agree to cover that as a covered loss because they consider it experimental, the city wouldn't get reimbursed that $15,000 if the employee reaches the specific deductible.
And I think I understand that. I guess my question then is, if this is, and I believe, I don't know who approves these technologies or these technologies, but I know this is it's a nationally widely recommended protocol. So I don't know who says it's approved or not.
I just haven't had the time because Ed, we didn't get the information until a couple hours ago.
And I understand.
To vet it. So I honestly, I don't see any issues with it. I'm just as cover your tail conversation. I just can't guarantee that, knowing the little that we know now, if that we can amend it. We can amend the language like we talked about at the work session. We can amend the language to have both, neither, or none. I mean, we can do that. It's just a plan document. And the intent was, I mean, we have no indication that anybody on the city's plan needs it. It's just, you're seeing more and more people offer the coverage because it is very, I mean, financially, in some cases, impossible for families that want to have a family to have families with assistance through different programs, whether it be in vitro, hormonal therapy, etc. So that was we expect a very low cost to the city, and it's just essentially a value add to help a family out in a struggling situation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so. I think if I understand you correctly, if it's an approved protocol by the stop loss, then we can add it at no extra cost to our.
Yep. Because we can amend the plan language to do both, kind of like we talked about. We just, we didn't have the information until you provided it to add the language, get it approved.
Okay.
So, and those amendments we make amendments to plans sometimes mid-year depending on legislation and plan changes. So those can be done.
Okay. Thank you. That helps.
Any other questions?
We reserve the right to call you back.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Ed?
No, Mr. Mayor, I motion that we approve item F.
Second.
Motion to approve item F by Mr. Reeker. Pete, did you second that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Second by Vols. Calling the question on the motion. Item F is approved. Moving on to item number 2 in the regular agenda. Third reading and action on ordinance number 4199 to amend Title 9, Chapter 91 of the Code of the City of North Platte to revise Section 91.21 relating to clearing of sidewalks and to add Section 91.29 relating to penalties for the violation of sidewalk ordinances. Wayne?
Ordinance number 4199. An ordinance of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, to amend Title 9, Chapter 91 of the Code of the city of North Platte by revising the provisions of Section 91.21 related to the clearing of sidewalks and by adding Sections 91.29 relating to penalties for the violation of sidewalk ordinances, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you.
I move to adopt ordinance number 4199 to amend Title 9, Chapter 91 of the Code of the City of North Platte to revise Section 91.21 relating to the clearing of sidewalks and add Section 91.29 relating to penalties for the violation of sidewalk ordinances on final reading.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Flanders. Do we have discussion on item number 2? Mr. Attorney, just for the record books here, if the council approves this on third reading tonight, when does this ordinance actually become law?
It's still
2 weeks.
Yeah, I believe we have it set to be effective after publication. So as soon as it would be published, then it would go into effect after that.
Okay.
So it's going to be a couple weeks.
So it's going to be a couple weeks.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 2, please. Item number 2 is passed. Item number 3, adopt a resolution to approve the 1 and 6 road plan for 2024-2030.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the resolution to approve the 1 and 6 road plan for 2024-2030.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Garrick. Brent, would you give us a couple minutes on what's in your plan, please?
Absolutely. Angie, would you be able to switch me over?
There you go.
Okay, what we have on the screen before you, I guess, first, good evening, Mayor, Council, Brent Berkland, City Engineer. What we have before you on the screens and hopefully in your packet that you can see as well is the 1-year plan of the 1 and 6 road and street program for the city of North Platte. And it doesn't show up quite as well on the screen, but you can see the difference. We have some red and green. And the green is what was completed last year that we're reporting in the previous year. And the red is what we're showing proposed for this year. And so I'll just go over these kind of on a high level basis. But what we have shown on green is if you start in the top middle, that's Mulligan Meadows. It's a private subdivision. That's 15th Street that the DevCo chamber finished that one block of street. We also had showing in green Willow Bridge repairs that we finished up last summer. And then it's a project led and coordinated by the state, but Jeffers were part of it and paying for it. Jeffers Street, which is from roughly A Street down, First Street down, all the way down to Leota, a little bit south of there to closer to the river bridge. So those were the projects that we showed completed for this last fiscal year. And then looking for this fiscal year, the projects that we have shown in red, what I might do is go with the state project, the parts that we're partnering with the state first. In red, we have the Dewey corridor and Leota. That segment is going through design right now. And the plan for construction is not next year, but the following. So they're taking a 2-year break this summer and next summer. There won't be construction, but the following there is. So right now, what's going to be done is the design work for the Leota and the Dewey portion thereof. They've also, we're working on the Newberry corridor from the interstate to Highway 30. That's another collaborative part with the state as well. There's a part that the city will be paying for, but we're working with them on the details of the design this next year. And then if we jump into the rest of the red on the city portion, at the top left, the northwest part of town, we have the CDBG projects, which is 15th and Custer. We have 3 blocks of paving that we're doing with the Community Development Block Grant funding that we're going to be advertising soon to receive bids in April for that project. We also have the 9th Street project, which is going to start this construction season, finish this construction season. That's been in the works for several years and on the books for decades, and the summer is going to be completed. Mulligan Meadows, Washington is the next street that's being looked at there. That's private development with Devco and the chamber on that. Over on the west side of town, we have Preston, Elizabeth, and Dixie. Those are 3 private developer streets north of Eisenhower along A Street. And then as you move over to the southeast part of town, and just from my general observances, at least in the last 5 years, we're kind of covering a lot of the areas of town here, which we haven't really had much on the east side. And on the east side, we have the private development, which would be the Fritz Farms portion, South McCabe, East Francis, and Western Avenue over there, south of Phillip, west of the industrial park. And then the other part is finalizing Golden Road in front of Sustainable Beef. And I guess I did miss the very southeast part. We have completed the South Industrial Park water sewer paving districts, but the paving is shown on this plan. So when you look at it, we have quite a few areas of town showing with different projects going on, and this is in the 1 year. And so this is what we're projecting for this fiscal calendar year. It'll probably go past the fiscal year depending on construction schedules. The second page, we have the 2 through 6, and that is all of the long-term, long range. We need to switch to the second tab.
It's up, if you just, there's a tab up there at the top. There you go. Okay.
What we have shown in orange is all the projects, and some of those are decade-long projects. Some are closer to coming along. To give you an idea, we have the Newberry construction is on there, and so is Dewey, but those are in the past 2-year time frame. So these are lumped together as future. Some are closer, more imminent, and some are longer range, and they're desired or planned for the future. So I'm not going to go through the details on those. Many of those roll from year to year. Either they need money or something to move them up the priority list, but they're on the long range plan. Does anybody have any questions on the 1 or the longer range? We call it 2 through 6, but just generically the longer range.
Yeah, I've just got a couple for you, Brent.
Go ahead.
I saw that Dixie was still on the 6-year plan. What do you see? I was thinking with that major overlay project we did that it might come off the 6, but do you still see that as a target area?
Well, it's been on there for probably 20 or 30 years. I could see that still being a potential upgrade to an urban section, but it's again, the time, the money, and the desire for it to happen. I see some advantages of making it a more uniform section from Phillip up to A Street, but there has to be some consensus on cost, the desire to have it, and things like that do change over time. So, but correct. That would I put on the further down the list at this point.
Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Brent, on, and I don't know if it's a question for you or not, but On the CBDG grants, is there any opportunity to use them to replace some of the sidewalks that are in disrepair? Does it have to be used on streets,
Like in the community itself.
in the
or
community itself?
The grant that we did was for street improvements, so it was targeted for what we're doing. Now, if there's a specific grant for just sidewalks, I don't know, I haven't seen it, and I looked over at Judy and she shook her head, no, we haven't seen it. I haven't seen one that exists for, are you talking about in existing areas
Right.
to fix things? No.
Okay. Okay. Because I know on the north side of town, and I know, well, I don't know this, but I think the standard protocol is the landowner is responsible for maintaining the sidewalks, and some of the folks probably don't have the wherewithal to do that, and consequently, some of them are in really, really bad shape. So, okay, thank you.
Brad?
Leota and Dewey, that corner right there, you're in planning phases. Is there any talks or thoughts of expanding that out? I mean, there's a lot of truck traffic going through there. Is there anything we can do in that area? It's kind of a bit of a problem area.
The state has they had hired a consultant, and they looked at many different options on what to do with that Leota corridor. They brainstormed every answer, including some that are not realistic. And they narrowed it down to a group of options that they're planning on having a public information meeting to present options and show things that could be done for that area. And they have some internal prioritization that they will present at that meeting on what they're looking at on that area, on what can be done to try to make it better.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah.
Kind of in that same area. So we had the group that came in that were the consultants that identified areas of safety issues and whatnot. I can't remember the exact name of their group that they were in a few months ago during interviews and whatnot. And one area that we had quite a bit of conversation in the session I was in about was the area where like Starbucks is, and then going over to like Dunkin' Donuts and Jersey Mike's and everything. As a result of that study or that analysis, is that area going to be looked at all for traffic flow, safety, that type of thing, or where do you see that area at this point?
Are you thinking pedestrian bikes or vehicles or all of the above?
All of the above, just overall safety of that particular area, traffic flow, that type of thing. I don't have any ideas. I just think it's an area that I think is getting problematic for us. And I know that there was quite a bit of discussion. The consultants had that on one of a handful of target areas that they were examining closer, but I just don't know where any of that work went. So I was just curious about it.
I don't think we have that. We don't have that finalized yet.
Okay.
Once we get it finalized, we'll share it with the state and probably create some more discussions on here's some findings, facts, and get some input on them on that section.
Okay, that's good. I worry about that section of town a lot, and I know they've got a lot of statistics that are a lot smarter than I am that analyze all that. But I think that area has significant growing safety concerns. I hear that from a lot of people, and I've observed that myself too. So yeah, anything we do just to keep an eye on that, I'd appreciate. So.
Oh, Nick?
Thank you. On the Rodeo Road ditch, what plans do you have for improvements on that?
Well, we don't have any plans right now. What we talked about was as an idea, and we've talked to the state a little bit about it, is if we enclose the ditch, put like a box culvert in, a concrete box, and use the lid as a bike trail.
Okay.
Was one idea that we talked about to still facilitate the water, but then make an 8-foot box culvert, a concrete box. It would be the bike trail in that area. That was an example of something that's been talked about in that area.
Okay.
And it abuts the state highway system. That ditch is a little bit complicated because it's an irrigation ditch's easement officially, but the state drains water in there, the city drains water in there, another ditch company runs water in there, and it makes it a little more challenging to deal with the entities. But that was something that was talked about as an idea for example.
Sounds
Yeah.
like we have 3 entities to pay for the culvert.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, it gets to be kind of an eyesore at times, and it's a lot of manpower and money to, keep it cleaned up as much as possible. And so, kind of like what Ty was talking about with safety concerns as well. I mean, there's hardly any sidewalks over going down that western Highway 30 corridor. So if we can do, where somebody can ride bikes or walk or anything down there is going to be a huge improvement, I think. So, thank you.
Other questions or comments for Brent? Thank you, Brent. Seeing none, calling the question on item number 3, please. Oops, I guess we got to get our voting mechanism back here. Sorry. There we go. Okay, vote please. Item number 3 is passed. Item number 4, accept certificate of completion and assessment schedule for paving district number 836 Iron Trail Drive from Twin Rivers Road thence west to Business Park Drive. Also Business Park Drive from State Farm Road thence north, approximately 1,760.77 feet. And set Board of Equalization for April 1, 2025.
Mr. Mayor, I move to accept certificate of completion and assessment schedule for paving district number 836 and scheduled to sit as a Board of Equalization on April 1, 2025.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Garrick. Do we have any discussion on item number 4?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Lucas.
I had a conversation yesterday with Gary Pearson from Chamber Devco, and Cassie's welcome to comment on this too, if that's okay with you, Mayor. But he had mentioned to me that they would like the city to have a little more time to explore the use of a 20-year assessment financing schedule for payments versus 10 years or 5 years. And so he asked if we would consider, which I'd be happy to make a motion to this effect, of moving that Board of Equalization meeting to April 15th of 2025, just to allow a little more time to explore that. And so I could go ahead and make that motion, or if you'd like for Cassie to make any comments on that, or however you want that handled, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have anything you'd like to add, Cassie?
No.
Cassie Condon with the North Platte Area Chamber and Development. Gary would have loved to be here tonight. Unfortunately, he's traveling. Ty said it very eloquently. Of course, we're excited to have you accept the certificate of completion and assessment. We've been in communication with the city about this for a couple of years. We're just hopeful that we can tie this all up and know exactly what the payment schedule is going to be to make sure that those easements are all finalized. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Why don't I go ahead and make a motion, then if we could have a minute. I got a couple comments on it too, Mayor, but I would move that we amend the proposed date of the Board of Equalization in the motion to April 15th of 2025.
Second.
Motion by Lucas, second by Vols, to amend the date in the motion to April 15th, 2025 for the Board of Equalization, or to set as the Board of Equalization. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Reeker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This may not be germane to the motion, I suppose, but do we have a standard protocol that we currently use on paving assessments and the payment schedule, or not? How does that work?
Do you want to mention this, or do you want to have Brent do it? Okay.
I don't know that I would, from my perspective, I would say I don't know that we have necessarily a very standardized process, because the city hasn't traditionally used improvement districts like this. And so we're starting to use them more frequently. And so that's why I just, from my perspective, I wouldn't say it's a standardized process right now.
Okay.
Brent, do you have anything to add?
To Bill's point, we haven't done a lot of the districts that have been assessed, requested paving wise specifically. Those are usually the more expensive ones. And in the past, frequently it's been a 10-year payment schedule, but state statute allows the council and the mayor to choose up to 20 years. And also, I believe, set the interest rate. Those are two variables that the council can choose at the time of the assessment. So that would be, I think, to the point of the discussion. So there's some flexibility in it. They put limits on it, no more than 20 years, and the interest rate, I believe, is 8%, that it can't be more than that. But outside of that, there's range and flexibility.
Did that answer your question, Ed?
Yeah, I think so. Seems like when we paved Emery, I was thinking it was 15 years, but I could be wrong. And I don't know. I just am curious how that time frame is established, and if it's something that we have to modify, that we have a protocol in place. And I think you've answered the question. Apparently we don't.
I would say with these improvement districts, you may want to have a little bit of flexibility because some of it may rely upon how the city itself is doing the long-term financing for it. So, you may look at whether you get a better rate on a 15-year bond as opposed to a 20-year bond or whatever it might be. So, those are a lot of the things that I would say we would look at as far as when we're making recommendations to council as to what we would recommend that you approve.
So you're thinking it might be more project specific?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Ty?
Yeah, a couple things more in depth for my conversation with Gary, and he said that that he wishes he could be here for this discussion, and he would be happy to in the future. But first of all, the part of this, there's TIF on part of this tract out there. I don't recall exactly which portions, but part of it, and those are usually a 15-year cash flow that doesn't start for 2 or 3 years. And the discussion we had was that, they're in the business of selling or granting property to new economic development projects. And so all of the payments in the meantime, I think they're still the largest landowner out there, are being carried by Chamber Development Corporation funds until they can try to recoup those through land sales and whatnot. And so the discussion was that if bonding is normally 15 or 20 years on these and the TIF contracts are normally 15, could we try to get a longer assessment schedule in a way that the carrying costs don't damage the Chamber DevCo's cash flow so much in the meantime? And he also commented that he knew that this was something that we hadn't done a lot in the community in North Platte, and so they're a good group to experiment with or work on or educate ourselves on the options, because we're not, in the heat of the middle of a proposed development or something like that. So it's a good time to educate ourselves a little bit on the topic, and I agree with them on that. So anyway, it sounds to me like if there's just a little more time to examine it, they can work on a final proposal. That seems fair to everybody.
Other questions or comments on the motion?
Maybe just one thing to double check. Would the changing of the time on this alter, would that cause any major alterations in notifications and things, or be done any major expense to the city or anything? No. Okay, thank you.
As long as we're moving it out, it's fine.
Okay.
We try to get it up.
That's
when
shortening the
it
process.
causes a
We're
problem,
okay.
so, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Ed?
Mr. Mayor, so if we stretch out the bond payments, how does that impact the city's borrowing ability?
Well, we've spent quite a bit of time talking bonds here at the City of North Platte lately. And I can tell you one of the things that I've learned is that and Dawn, keep me honest here if I don't state this accurately, but each bond consideration is considered with that bond consideration. And my understanding of the reason that it's done that way by the bonding companies is that there are probably 40 different variables that go into deciding what a bond interest rate will be for a municipality. Fair to say, Don? Okay. And all those are changing all the time. So if we decide we're going to do bonds for a street, I don't know, 6 months from now, our situation is different than it was 18 months ago. And so therefore they consider them at that time. It is different than like a credit rating like you and I might have, where, depending on how financially responsible we are, it affects our credit rating. The bond instances for the city, they look at the situation every time and decide what the rate would be if the city decided to go into bonds at that time. That's how they do it. So it's kind of like a credit rating, but it's a little bit different. Ty, do you want to add anything to my
The only thing I'd add, it's the double-edged sword on that, because the longer debt's out there, the longer it's out there, the more debt you have. But the lower the payments are, the better your coverage ratios are. And so there's a pro and a con in terms of future projects that would tie to that. Coverage ratios are probably seen as the most important thing, but I wouldn't think that these would have I don't think that this would have a major effect on the city's bond profile, in my opinion. One thing I've learned as we've been working on all this is how each bonding section is so bucketed differently, whether that's sales tax or property tax or special use tax or utility or roads. They all have their own little world for bonding, it seems like that, and they each tie back to then what the revenue source is that's tied to that specific item. But the other item I forgot to mention earlier is that this infrastructure is so much more expensive than it used to be. But we're also doing it in a way, I know Brent and his team are working hard so those roads don't need touched for more than 20 years. And so I think there's been a shift in the cost profile of all that stuff. There's also been a shift in the useful life of a lot of it too. And so looking at the financing to me makes some sense there to make sure it fits it well. I think the thing that's interesting about assessments is that if somebody goes to buy a lot, they obviously are going to figure out what their assessments are. People tend to view them a little bit like tap fees almost, or they don't always gross them up. And so it's a pretty good way to help keep land affordable and to utilize this, as long as the city can do it in a way where we don't get stuck holding the bag on it. So.
Well, I guess that's my question, and I mean, this is kind of a hypothetical situation because we aren't really discussing it right now, but is there a limit that the city can do? Is there a limit that the city can bond up to? And if there is, will this have an impact on future projects if we stretch them out over a longer period of time?
So again, Don, keep me honest here, and Ty, the limit is a factual limit in that the city only receives about so much revenue. So obviously we can bond such that we can go in the hole.
Right.
We can't do that. That's not an option, or at least not a realistic option anyway. And even getting close to that would probably not be a very good thing to do, because then if you dipped, and so when the bonding companies come in and they rate each issuance of bonds, they look at all that when they come in. So if the bonding companies interpreted that we were anywhere close to being unrealistic about our paying ability, the interest rate would shoot up and the bond rating would go down, which would be a signal to whoever is sitting around this table that this is probably not a good way to finance whatever is being discussed. And so, yes, there are limits, but they're practical based on the revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, can I just add one thing?
Certainly.
When the auditor's been here every year for our work session, she's provided some benchmark ratios that I always try to take a note or two on. I know we'll probably be doing that in May or June. And she has a set of guidelines on like coverage ratios, like that'd be like your income versus your debt payments, and then also on total indebtedness and compares that to what our like total tax base and total real estate value is. And so if your question is a little more on when's too much debt or how much capacity, that when she does that presentation, I think she's done a really good job of dialing into that for us. We're just 8 or 9 months away, and we've had a lot happen since that. But that's something that I think will be an important topic in our work session this year to go through that. But she's given us some good information on that in the past.
Well, if I understand correctly, then let's just say that one of the parties that has the bond, the company goes broke and can't make the payments on the bond. Does that bond go with the property so that the next guy gets to pay off the bond?
Yes, it stays with that's why it's an assessment. It stays
So
with the
our
property.
exposure really is pretty limited from the standpoint that the bond is going to get paid unless we have a major financial collapse, and then we're all going to be in the same boat.
You could certainly have a situation though where a city, so the assessments get put on the property, but we still have to finance the dollars. And so if we don't have enough cash to pay for the subdivision and we use financing, we're getting our own
Okay.
financing as a city using our credit, which makes the bonds tax exempt and gets them low interest rate and the flexible terms. But then the assessment is the revenue source that comes to make the city whole on it. So if those lots never sell, assessments didn't get paid, they don't get paid for 3 years, and they go to a sheriff's sale and the sheriff issues a sheriff's deed on them. At that point, we made a big mistake because those assessments, aren't going to get paid. Is that right, Bill? Kind of how that works?
And I haven't brushed up a lot lately on the process for assessments like these going delinquent, but there is a statutory procedure where if, say, the nightmare scenario is developer goes under, stops paying the assessments, somebody comes in, forecloses, or the city comes in, forecloses, depending on what the statutes allow. So we don't want that to happen. We want it to stay in the hands of the chamber in this instance, and for the chamber to sell it off to other people. And so there are mechanisms in place that would address those, let's say, delinquencies. But we hope we never get to that. And, going back to Ty's point and what Cassie talked about, by allowing the chamber some additional time to pay that, it maybe reduces that risk, and gives them more time. I know I've had conversations with Gary too. Companies that would come in and invest in these lots out here, a lot of times they may want to just pay off their assessment
Right.
in one fell swoop.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of that goes into it too. So, I think back to the original point though, it's more time provides maybe some more flexibility for the development. But there are mechanisms in place should the assessments not be paid.
Well, I want to clarify my questions were directed at Devco.
Well, I think you're right though, Ed, but I think there's some best practices that municipalities look at on this. For example, one would be keeping the interest rate fair, but high enough that they want to pay them off, because that's going to lower
That's true,
our
too.
credit risk. And second, like on a project like this, of course, the first street and infrastructure was already done. There's good businesses out there. There's new investment. And so bringing a district in to help finish it off is a whole different risk profile than if you were doing the very first street, for example. And, making sure they're in good locations, they're marketable. But as long as the assessments or any accrued taxes stay below the value of that lot, you should be okay. Because those are going to have a priority to any mortgages or any other obligations generally on those properties. So unless you get way over your skis on the assessment amounts, you should be in a pretty safe positions on those.
Thank you for indulging me on the questions. That helped a lot. I do have
Rod, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, being unfamiliar with how this works, this is probably a crazy question, but if I had one of these properties and my assessment was $417,000 and I wrote you a check, does that all go to the bond, or does part of that go to the general fund and you just pay so much a month, or how does that work?
It would depend on where the bond was and its callable ability. So typically bonds the municipalities engage in cannot be paid clean. I'm saying typically, it's not exclusively true, for 5 years after issuance. So if that occurred in year 2, a portion of it would be kept in the fund and then
And then
interest
it'd be a
paid, and then
revolving
the
account
point,
to pay
yeah,
it.
then at the point at which it could be paid completely, then it would be
Okay.
paid completely.
I just wasn't sure how that worked.
Dawn's nodding at me, so I gave that answer correctly. Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion on the proposed amendment to change the Board of Equalization date to April 15 rather than April 1? Seeing none, calling the question on the amendment. Okay, the date is now April 15th. Back to the original consideration. Do we have any further discussion on the original number 4 motion as amended? You guys have forgotten what the original motion.
No, I didn't. Kind of a round smile.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, calling the question on number 4 as amended, please. Number 4 as amended is passed. Number 5, accept certificate of completion and assessment schedule for Water Extension District number 267 at the intersection of Twin Rivers Road and Iron Trail Drive, thence west approximately 1,021.25 feet to the intersection of Business Park Drive, also Business Park Drive from State Farm Road, thence north approximately 1,760.77 feet, and set the Board of Equalization for April 1, 2025.
Move to accept the certificate of completion and assessment schedule for Water Extension District number 267 and scheduled to sit as a Board of Equalization on April 1, 2025.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Flanders. Would you like to sit on the Board of Equalization all at once, or how would you like to do this? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to amend the motion to change the date of Board of Equalization to April 15th, 2025.
Second.
Motion by Lucas, second by Vols to change the Board of Equalization date to April 15th, 2025 on item number 5. Any discussion on that amendment?
Not this time.
Not this time. Calling the question on the amendment then, please. And the amendment is passed. Okay, we're back to number 5 as amended. The Equalization Board date is now April 15th. Do we have any discussion on item number 5 as amended? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 5 as amended, please. Okay, item number 5 is passed. Item number 6, accept certificate of completion and schedule of benefits for sanitary sewer connection district number 21, beginning at the northeast corner of Lot 1 of Iron Trail 3rd Administrative Subdivision, then continuing west parallel to the north lot lines of Lot 1 of Iron Trail 3rd Administrative Subdivision, lots 3 and 5 of Iron Trail 2nd Subdivision, and the south lot line of part of west half northeast quarter and part southeast quarter of 151330 to the northwest corner of Lot 3 of Iron Trail 2nd Subdivision, approximately 2,000 feet. Thence south at Business Park Drive, parallel to the east lot line of lots 1 through 3 of Iron Trail 2nd Subdivision and the west lot line of lots 4 and 5 of Iron Trail 2nd Subdivision, approximately 1,760.77 feet, and set the Board of Equalization for April 1, 2025. You guys didn't think I'd get through that without making a mistake.
I move to accept certificate of completion and schedule of benefits for sanitary sewer connection district number 21 and schedule to sit as a Board of Equalization on April 15th, 2025.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Lucas. Please note that the motion was for the Board of Equalization to be on April 15th, 2025, and item number 6. Do we have any discussion on item number 6? Seeing none, calling the question as motioned for item number 6. Thank you. Item number 6 is passed, and the Board of Equalization for that one will also be on the 15th of April, 2025. Item number 7, accept certificate of completion for Street Improvement District number 362 Willow Street Bridge over UPRR from 4th Street to 8th Street.
Move to accept the certificate of completion for Street Improvement District number 362 Willow Street Bridge over UPRR from 4th Street to 8th Street.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Rod Dye. That's who I could hear. So I think maybe Nick did too, but we don't need to. So thank you. Any discussion on item number 7? Ed?
Mr. Mayor, was that, excuse me, was that work on the deck or was that on the structure underneath the deck?
I believe it was both, but we'll ask Brent.
Okay.
That's correct. It was both. There was some on the deck and there was a substantial amount underneath on the piers and some of the steel components.
So, and I'm not sure on that particular one, is there a warranty on that or not, on the deck part?
The city did most of the work on the deck itself, so we're self-warranted, I guess.
Well, I guess I was thinking, I'm probably thinking of the one on Buffalo. But they didn't resurface the rest of the deck that the city did not do.
Correct. What we did was some of the approaches to the deck itself and the expansion joint up on the deck. They replaced the nosing, that portion of the deck up above,
Okay,
and the city did some of the flat
right,
work on the approaches up to it.
okay. All right, no, you've answered my question, thank you.
Tight. Hold on,
Can I
Brent.
catch you real quick on this?
Sorry.
No, did we come in, how did we come in compared to initial target cost? And can the cost to Union Pacific Railroad, can you remind me what that's for as part of the cost schedule?
Sure. We were over our cost estimates. That was during some of the inflation they were experiencing a lot of. The other thing is there's not very many bridge contractors, so there were many jobs and a handful of bridge contractors. So those two kind of factored together, I think, on some of the costs. They were probably about 30% higher than we had anticipated. The other part is the cost for the railroad is they require, part of the agreement with the original bridge construction is they have in there we have to pay for their engineer to look at what we're doing. So the railroad hires an engineer and we pay them to look at it. So we ended up relatively inexpensive compared to what it could be. So it was up to around $30,000 and we paid around $12,000. So we paid $12,000 to have the railroad's engineers look at it. It wasn't even railroad employees, it was their contract engineers. So even the safety protocols, they charged us for everything for their safety protocols, things like that. So.
No, I recall more of that now from the initial discussions that we, so, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Pete?
If I'm not mistaken, we still have to do Buffalo and Poplar in
Correct.
the future, correct?
Yes.
So when do you anticipate that? And do you anticipate the same type of price? Hard to say 2-3 years out from now, but.
What we picked out for priority was Willow had the most significant issues that we needed fixed that were going to escalate further in cost. That a lot of the bridge costs, they exponentially go up. They don't, 1 year doesn't add 10%. That one had rebar at the piers going bad, that was expensive. Buffalo was number 2 and Poplar was number 3. Buffalo is going to be a little more expensive because it's a longer bridge and there's more work relative to Willow. Just the length of it's a bigger bridge. So it would probably be, what we had looked at, it'd be probably 30 to 40% more work than Willow. Whether that's 30 or 40% more cost might depend on where's the economy and where's the bridge contractor's busyness go. So
Okay.
I would expect it to be more. Hopefully, if we hit things right, maybe it'll be the same for more work. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other, Ed?
So Brent, we were 30% over our budget estimate, and I'm I'm just asking a question, I'm not making any accusation or anything like that, but that took into account the cost of the self-performing work that we did? I mean, how did we bill out, how did we account for the cost to the city of the work that the city did?
We accounted for that by, I got the invoices. It was mainly material. There was bolts, rebar, concrete, some of the components, but we took all of those things, kept them all together, and then I gave them to Don on the billing. So we kept track of that as a separate item, anything that the city did. But we had the district created for that bridge itself. So all of the invoices, all of the bills went to that bridge. And then the city components we kept track of separately. So in the computer, we can track what went to the contractor and what were city purchases, if you want to say, for that.
But on your bid, did you bid it such that the contractor would do all of the work, even the work that the city did?
We had some things that the city did to reduce the price.
Okay.
There were some components in the negotiating part because it was so high. There was some downspouts that we had the city do instead of the contractor. There was a manhole repair we had the city do instead of the contractor to reduce the price as far as the bid goes anyway.
I don't know. I think we're kind of seeing some stabilization in some of those costs finally, so
Yes, agree.
that's a good thing. They're not coming down, but they're more stable.
Correct.
Thank you.
Brad?
When are we shooting to have Buffalo and Poplar done?
I don't know. That's something Lane and we've talked about when do we want to rebid it. We could look at this fall for rebidding Buffalo. Some of it's timing, if we can get a good timing on it. We learned a little bit as far as contractors, as far as trying to get a bigger pool. We did attack the bigger pool and they were just all busy. So, and bridges usually they're longer than a year frequently. They're a couple year. So for them to cycle through projects, we'll check back in. I guess some of it gets into financing and making sure that works money wise, but I'd like to take another run at it probably this fall.
So the increased cost, you're thinking 30 to 40% just by the length of the bridge. Would that be a 30 to 40% increase in time that it's unavailable also?
Probably on Buffalo, yes.
Something you might want to think about if they're out 2 years is we're going to be shutting down Dewey, which is a major thing. And if we have Buffalo and Dewey down at the same time, that could cause some problems. So something to think about.
We had that last year with, unfortunately, with Willow and
Made a
Jeffers.
difference.
It wasn't great. We survived, but yeah, no, good point.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Mayor, just a quick comment. I just want to clarify too, Brent, you were very upfront with the council that the costs had some uncertainty on this. So I know that's had a lot. And frankly, of all the things we've had that created a lot of interruption, I thought the Willow Bridge interruption was pretty well managed considering the situation. I didn't hear near the gripes about it that I probably expected. So all in all, I know we're sitting here going, oh my gosh, it costs 30% more than we thought. But I think we also had our eyes open going into this one, as I recall on it. So thank you.
Other questions or comments? Calling the question on item number 7, please. Item number 7 is passed. Item number 8, approve the agreement for sale of real property with Larry, is it Godding? Godding, and authorize the mayor to sign necessary documents.
I move to approve the agreement for sale of real property with Larry Godding and authorize the mayor to sign necessary documents.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by McNew. Bill, you want to run us through this real quick?
Yes, so this item had been in front of the city council towards the end of last year. So this is a residential property directly to the south of Madison Middle School. We had, at the time, several months ago, negotiated an agreement to purchase it from the property owner. The property has had a condemnation order entered by the district court saying that it needs to be condemned. So we've also been actively seeking bids for remedying the nuisance that's there. Everyone will recall that the city recently purchased the property just directly to the east of this for use as a city park. And as an aside, I understand that I haven't been by there for a little while, but I understand that things are progressing pretty well over there right now. So as part of all that process, we were trying to get closed on this lot. The idea was to use it in conjunction with the park, so to not put another residential building back on it. And Lane can maybe speak more to this than I can, but I know I've at least heard from some of the city, maybe it's parks, but maybe some of the other departments have looked at some of the outbuildings that are on this lot, and they think they can be utilized for some of the park that's being developed over there for storage and things like that. So there's some things that the city can get some use out of, in addition to just the land itself. But fast forward, we got close to being able to close on this, and the title company found a lien that was hanging out there, and it was for a loan that the property owner had taken out through the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. And typically the way those loans work is that they don't require payments during the life of the loan, but then once the property is sold, or maybe the loan matures, then it has to be paid off at that point. And so the property owner had kind of forgotten about it, but when it came time to close, he either needed to come up with almost an extra $12,000, or we were going to have a property with a lien on it, and we didn't want that. He didn't have the money to come up with the extra money, and so we kind of went back to the starting line and started trying to negotiate some more. So what we have in front of council tonight is what we've been able to come to terms with the property owner. Basically, he does not end up with any money from the sale of the property, but he gets out from underneath the liability for it. What we're proposing is that the city basically come up with the additional money to pay off that HUD loan for him. So he is getting that benefit. But like I said, we've also discovered that there's some additional benefit for the property in storage and things like that, and some of the other buildings that are there. And in addition to that, the city's grant that it received through the State Department of Economic Development, we went back to them, and the initial grant application was to be able to use those grant funds not just for housing, but also for some development of green space. And so we did get authorization from DED to use some of that grant money to purchase this property. And so we'll be able to funnel this purchase, if it's approved by council. We'll be able to use the state grant funds, which are actually federal funds. So here's the interesting part about it. We're going to use federal funds to reimburse federal funds. So at the end of the day, that's what we're proposing here. I think we get a good benefit for the city, for that neighborhood around Madison. And I think from what we've discovered, I think it would be a good addition to the park property that we're developing there too. So so it's been kind of a long process to be able to figure all this out, but what we have in the purchase agreement that's being proposed tonight for approval is just the best. It's the best deal we could come up with since the initial deal fell through. So,
Thank you. Questions?
Mr. Mayor, so did I understand you correctly, Bill? You said that the HUD lien was for something like $12,000?
yeah, it's just under 12,000. It's 11,000 and some change.
And we're purchasing it for $17,750. Where's the other money going then?
There are real estate taxes that are owed for several years. So a big chunk of that, in addition to the HUD lien, are real estate taxes. And then it's just closing costs to the title company.
Okay.
So
Truly, he's getting nothing out of it.
Other
Cup of
than the
coffee.
benefit of not having the HUD loan
Sure.
hanging over his head. anymore. So he's getting that benefit, but he won't realize anything for this. He won't realize anything immediately in a monetary sense from selling the property, but he's already signed the purchase agreement. He's on board with this. He's been good to work with.
And then the other question that I have, probably maybe is more a question for Lyle, I don't know, but if some of the buildings can be used, what's the rest of the property gonna be used for?
It'll be a piece of the park.
So green space, yeah, whatever.
He has kind of a tentative plan, but I don't think it's finalized. I don't, but there's a house kind of relatively close, so we probably won't put a basketball court right in our backyard or anything
Yeah.
like that. So it'll probably be just green in that area.
Okay.
And I think the shed that's there for storage is towards the back of this property. It's to the south end of the property. And so the area along the sidewalk would be kind of just more open,
Okay.
from my understanding. But
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
One other question, I guess, Mr. Mayor. So is some of this purchase money coming from the New Bern funds?
No, it's just coming from the
Oh,
grant.
I'm sorry, from the grant. But so to turn it into a park, there's no New Bern funds expended there.
That is correct.
Okay.
On that piece of property.
Right. Okay, thank you.
yep, on this particular piece of property, we'll be able to run the purchase price and the expenses for cleanup through the state grant through the Department of Economic Development. So it'll just be through that grant program.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Ty?
Yeah, I'd just add, despite all the gymnastics on the price, I mean, it seems fair. It went look by it. It doesn't seem to me that it's out of whack with market value.
So,
In support of it.
I guess the other thing that I neglected to mention is that with some of these other properties that we're purchasing, if we feel like the house is not able to be rehabilitated, what we're looking at so far as the starting point for negotiations is kind of what the assessed value is for the lot itself. And this is a little bit over what the assessed value is for the lot, but it's still pretty close to in line with what that assessed value is.
thank you.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 8, please. Item number 8 is passed. Item number 9 is our first public hearing of the evening. The public hearing will be in regard to amending the City of North Platte 2011 future land use map, amending certain land from medium-density, single-family, duplex, and multifamily to commercial on property located at 603 East 5th Street and 503 North Cottonwood Street. I'm officially opening up the public hearing, but first I'm going to ask Judy to do a quick description of what we're talking about here.
Mayor, Council, this item directly correlates also with the next item on the agenda, which is the rezoning. So in order to rezone a property, all of your rezoning decisions have to be in conformance with your comprehensive plan. You are allowed to amend a comprehensive plan as needed if there are changes in zoning anticipated. So this first one is the amendment because there is a request to rezone the property, as you'll see on that next item.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a public hearing. Does anyone have a comment on this item? If so, please come to the front and make your comment.
Excuse me.
Bless it.
Thank you.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Vols to close the public hearing. Calling the question on closing the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Now the council will consider amending the City of North Platte 2011 future land use map, amending certain land from medium density, single family, duplex, and multifamily to commercial on property located 603 East 5th and 503 North Cottonwood Street. And we do have the owner in the audience. If anyone has any questions on this item, I'm sure he would be happy to answer. English is not his first language, so we have asked our friends who speak Spanish better than any of us to come and help us translate. So,
Mayor, I move to amend the City of North Platte Comprehensive Plan 2011 Future Land Use Map, amending certain lands from medium-density, single-family, duplex, and multifamily to commercial on property located at 603 East 5th Street and 503 North Cottonwood Street.
Second.
motion by Garrick, second by Reeker. Questions or comments? Discussion. Okay. Calling the question on item number 9. Item number 9 is passed. Number 10, we have a public hearing as well, remarkably similar to the last subject, in which the public hearing will be the first reading and action on ordinance number 4200 to rezone certain land from an R3 dwelling district to a B3 downtown commercial district on property located at 603 East 5th Street and 503 North Cottonwood Street. Laying the ordinance, please.
Ordinance number 4200. An ordinance of the City of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, rezoning certain lands described as Lot 5, Block 110, original town of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, from an R3 dwelling district to a B3 downtown commercial district, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open. Anyone that would like to make a comment, please approach the microphone. Judy, do you have anything to add?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'll kind of explain this a little bit. So since you did amend the land use, now this is eligible to be rezoned. And with the map attached, you can see that right across the street from this property, it does abut a B3 district. What had happened a couple of years ago, Mr. Takuri had came and wanted to do some restaurant type stuff out of his home, which was allowed under a home occupation. He has a pupusa, kind of a coffee shop out there. And over time, it kind of got a little bit bigger than what would fit under a home occupation permit. And so that's when we asked him to come and rezone the property so that he could continue to allow his pupusa cafe to continue as a legal use in a B3 district. And with that also, he is looking at, he does have that residential structure there, which is where he lives. And he wants to also reach out to the community and maybe offer some classes as like English as a second language and things like that to help community members that don't speak English as a first language. So, and he is here if you have some additional questions for him.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we're still in the public hearing. Does anyone have a comment in the audience? If so, please approach the microphone and let us hear what you have to say.
I have a question.
Okay.
My name is Cindy Huntsman. I live right next to place over here. I just wonder what kind of traffic, whatever he's proposing besides the restaurant, which I've had no problem with. What are we looking at for traffic? I know that when I read Judy's, it was going to have an immigration office. English is a second language. I just know that I just want to know what kind of traffic and is there parking available? Are you still going to live there is my question for him.
Okay. Go ahead and have a seat, Cindy, and then we'll ask for a response. Thank you.
From the south side.
If you guys could come at the microphone, please. Thank you.
Bien, en la calle 50, en la calle Quinta,
On the 5th Street,
en la esquina donde está el
the
terreno.
corner
el
where
co-
the land is.
sí.
Hold on,
calle
hold on.
Quinta.
Miss, would you get closer to the microphone? The folks at home probably need to hear you, so thank you.
Eh,
Okay.
En la parte sur del
On
terreno
the south side of the land,
que queda en la calle Quinta,
that's on the 5th Street.
Ya, queremos abrir aquí, está lo que es lo que es aquí, ¿cómo se llama el tema?
The sidewalk?
Sí,
Mhm.
ahí
Where the
queremos,
sidewalk is,
queremos abrir
they
ahí
want to be able
unos
to put parking
cuatro o
spaces,
cinco,
maybe 4 to
para
5
cinco
parking spaces,
vehículos.
maybe going like that.
5 vehículos aquí para que no quede
4 or
muy,
5 vehicles,
no estén mucho afuera de la
that way the
calle.
vehicles aren't extending into the street.
Ujú. Y también tenemos al otro lado en la calle Cottonwood,
And then on Cottonwood Street,
también tenemos otro espacio para
they
poder
also
hacer
have
otro,
parking available where they could add
como
more.
para unos
sections
seis vehicles
for
y
6
4
vehicles.
aquí serían 10.
So 6 on this side, 4 on that side,
Mhm,
equaling
mhm,
10
mhm.
parking spots.
Okay. Cindy, does that answer your question?
I think it does.
Okay.
They wanted to know too if you're going to still live there.
¿Todavía va a vivir usted allí?
Pues bueno, hasta hacer los arreglos, todo, pues estamos haciendo, construyendo una casa frente de la escuela Jefferson.
As of right now, they are
Yeah.
constructing another home in front of
Yeah.
Jefferson School.
Cuando terminemos de esa, entonces
So when
pasamos de
they
ahí
are
para
done fixing it up, they will move houses.
acá. Ujú.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? Okay, come up and ask it, please.
So my question for Luis is if he's moving, is that gonna be an office building right next to us then? It's not gonna be a residence?
Sí, queremos hacer una oficina queremos hacer ahí una oficina de servicios, por ejemplo,
want to open up a service
hacer una
space,
agencia para vender,
maybe a nonprofit organization.
por ejemplo, aseguranza para
Maybe
carros,
have
para,
like an insurance
para
for
casas.
vehicles
Sí,
or
porque aquí solamente he visto aseguranzas, pero
because
solo en
right now we
español,
have
en
only-
inglés, pero hay mucha gente que, sí, ya.
he said right now, whenever he goes to get insurance, there's only English speaking individuals, so he wants to possibly add insurance to his organization.
Sí. O sea, hay también en la comunidad gente de habla hispana
And
y
in the
que,
community,
y
there's a
que
lot of Spanish
necesitan
speaking
o
individuals
tener una orientación
who need
y
orientation
comprar un seguro
or
en
maybe
su lengua.
buy a type
para-
of insurance, so they should
Sí.
be able to do that in their native language.
Ujú. Y por ejemplo eso, hacer una oficina para dar clases a muchos
And open up a space where he's
gente que,
able to give
gente
classes
que no habla inglés,
for individuals who don't
ayudarles,
speak English.
sí, esto y también orientación, por ejemplo,
And just
gente que
orienting
quiere
them
cómo comprar una casa,
on how
cómo
people should
prepararse,
buy houses and how to prepare for that.
porque hay gente que va al real estate
Because there are
y,
people who go
y
to
ya,
real estate
ya enseguida entra a procesar un préstamo o comprar
and they
una
go
casa,
right in the process
pero
of buying
antes,
a house.
pero antes
But before
necesita
that,
el
they
prepararse
need to
para
be able to
cómo
prepare
tener un buen
on
crédito,
how to get a good credit
cómo
score
sentar los primeros
or how to get
procedimientos
started on the first steps.
para poder optar, pero eso no hay,
in order to
entonces,
obtain a
y es muy
house.
costoso si
And
van
right now,
a otros
there's
lugares
no
y nosotros
services like that,
queremos ayudar
and they want to be able to
a
offer
la
that
gente para que opte comprar
so
una
people
casa.
can be able to buy houses.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have a comment in the public? Cindy, any other questions?
Well, I honestly thought that this was gonna be a residence yet, to be real honest. That's when I talked to Judy, we thought that was gonna remain residential and just have people come in, and I did not realize it was gonna change into an office space. I live right next to that property. So I do have a little concern with that, because it's not gonna be a residence anymore. It's gonna be a office building, is what I understand. So I do have a little concern with that.
Okay. Do we have other questions in the public?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Vols to close the public hearing. Sit back down for a second. We may ask you more questions, but thank you. Calling the question and closing the public hearing, please. Public hearing is now closed. Council will now consider first reading and action on ordinance number 4200 to rezone certain land from an R3 dwelling district to a B3 downtown commercial district on property located at 603 East Fifth Street and 503 North Cottonwood Street. Judy, do you have anything else to add real quick?
Just a couple of things. In a B3 district, I know that he did talk about the possibility of adding some parking stalls, which I would not disagree with or not keep him from doing. But just so you know, in a B3 district, they are not required to have on-street or on-site parking. In a B3 district, it's legal to have all-street parking, just so you know that. The other thing, most of the business type things that he was explaining would be done there would all be allowed in a B3 district.
Thanks. Council, discussion? Oops, I guess we need a motion, don't we? Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4200 to rezone certain land from a R3 dwelling district to a B3 downtown commercial district located at 603 East 5th Street and 503 North Cottonwood Street on first reading.
Second.
Motion by Lucas, second by Reeker. Okay, further discussion. Sorry, got ahead of myself there. Nick?
So is that going to change anything on the properties themselves, changing them from residential to occupying people? I mean, are we going to have anybody go in there and inspect? Is that going to change any inspections in those properties or anything like that?
They do have a number of people that can occupy a certain space. So when he's talking about having classes of English as a second language, we would probably have to take a look at that and see how many people could actually occupy that space at any given time.
Okay.
So, yeah. But as far as if they're not moving any load-bearing walls or anything like that, we don't send them all the way back through the inspection process. They can occupy it as a business. And most of the time you're, like an insurance salesman, we have a lot of insurance companies that are in residential homes. And, you don't have enough people there at one time, but we would probably need to check on that, holding classes to see if the capacity's there.
Okay. Real quick again, so a business was started there, and then what was the reasoning or the deciding factors to go ahead and move it to commercial? What was the issues with it?
So with a home occupation, you can do things like catering services. You can bake goods and take them to people, or you can have people every once in a while come up and show up. And what happened, and I think there was a communication barrier when he first was issued the home occupation permit, it kind of turned into an actual restaurant setting. And so when it turned into a restaurant setting, it no longer met the criteria for being a home occupation permit, because with a home occupation, you're not supposed to go away from the characteristics of a residential neighborhood, which with a restaurant where you have people actually showing up, sitting there, eating, kind of like a coffee shop, that gets into more of a business type situation. So once we discovered that this kind of became more than what we had originally thought it was going to be, that's when the request to rezone it was asked.
Ed?
Mr. Mayor, so Judy, since this is as I understand, a restaurant now, I would imagine the requirements for that, where your cooking area and fire protection and egress, ingress would change because of the occupancy change. Am I correct?
Yes. So there's two buildings here. There's the residential structure and then a smaller, what I would call a smaller residential structure. The smaller one was where he started the restaurant type thing. And so the building inspectors did go out there. I think he had to add some sinks and some things like that to the restaurant portion, which was that second structure that's on that property.
So what you're telling me then, if I understand you correctly, with the change in occupancy, the way it's currently constructed, they meet the requirements, the statutory requirements.
For that restaurant portion, which is that second smaller structure, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Pete.
So I'm trying to wrap my head. I drove by it today. The smaller structure is going to remain the restaurant. Is that accurate?
En el local pequeño, sí, el restaurante se va a mantener. Es esa parte.
The smaller residential place will stay a restaurant.
Okay, so that's
What was that?
Judy, repeat
Yes,
that
the smaller structure would remain the restaurant.
okay. So that's not changing the scope of anything we're doing here.
No, absolutely not.
But what we really have to look at is, as opposed to a residence, do we want the other services in that area, i.e. insurance company, aid, naturalization aid, things like that. Looking at that property, there's a fence all the way around it. I don't know. I'm just trying to get a picture of what that is going to look like 5 years from now, and the B3 area makes complete sense. We can't, once we zone it to B3, we can't dictate what goes there. It turns into a B3. And it makes sense. It's right across the street. There's B2 Highway District a block away, because you've got Poplar and 4th Street. So the area is trending that direction. There's a scuba shop just to the north. The area has trended there. You're only a block away from what I consider downtown. So I'm just trying to picture what this looks like. So if we approve it, we can't dictate what goes there, and we have to live with our decision. I don't know. That'll be a call that we all make. So that's all I have. I was just trying to get a picture of what's going to happen there.
Ty?
I want to dial back into two things, Judy, with you. First of all, could you maybe walk us through B3 versus BT or business transitional for this type of why B3 is selected, or how business transitional, and maybe not even just specific to this property, but thankfully our downtown's really occupied right now. So naturally, if you go to downtowns that are vibrant, you start to see rim businesses in the homes, around the downtowns, which makes sense. Some of them are, you get really cute little shops and whatnot. And so I want to understand when you use B3 and when you use business transitional, and how you make that decision, what the differences are.
So typically when I look at a map, when somebody comes in and says, hey, I would like to look at rezoning this property, I typically look at what is already there and what is around that property and how that's going to fit. A BT would be a really good thought, but there's no other business transitional in that area at all. So you would take this one lot and just make it a business transitional by itself, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. So when you try to zone, you try to have it fit with what's next door, or what's right by it, or what's maybe a block away. And so that's why the B3 was chosen, is because the B3 is just right across the street. It's in a downtown area, and it makes a lot of sense just to keep it the same instead of going with a different zoning. In a business transitional, they would still be able to do pretty much the same thing that you're talking here. If I can remember from the top of my head what a business transitional is, it's small type offices, the restaurant may not fit in a BT. I'd have to go back and actually pull the code to look at that, but your office space would. And so the B3, being that the restaurant's already there, it's already established, it just made a lot of sense. Plus the area around it is already B3.
I'd just comment too, if any of you haven't been to the restaurant, a few minutes ago, I stopped and did some food carry out there. It's really a small carry out area. I mean, there's a couple tables outside that people can wait at and whatnot, but it's not like there's 10 tables in there. It's really it would remind you of like the little coffee shop structure over by the barn store or something like that in terms of its size and operation there. And it looks nice, is in good commercial shape and everything. Maybe to dial into the parking, that would be the biggest concern I have, is the parking on the lot and what's designed. So if we went to the other homes that are being used for businesses, like I think of the ones along the one-ways that have been, I mean, there's a number of them in town. So if they flip from being a residence to being a commercial, we don't have any parking requirements with that, or they just have to have certain spaces, or how's that work?
No, we do have parking requirements there because it's a different zoning district. In a B2, you are required to follow the parking regulations for on-site parking. A B3 does not have that requirement in there. That's why you get the difference there. So the ones that you see along the ones, they do have to meet parking requirements, which is roughly one parking stall for every 300 square feet of space. But again, in a B3 district, because it is downtown, I mean, that's what it is, downtown commercial, it does not have that requirement for on-street parking.
Okay.
Or, excuse me, on-site parking.
Because we're more in the community parking concept of a downtown versus the individual business of a B2 then. is how
Correct, where
look at
you
that.
park somewhere and walk in the downtown. That's kind of the intent of a B3. Plus with a B3 district, then those buildings can build property line to property line without having to have that setback for the parking requirements.
You know, maybe just one opinion I've got, I'm sure there's different ways of looking at this. A lot of the businesses that you see that go into former residential structures by nature just don't have that much traffic because it doesn't really work that well.
Right.
You know, to have large groups of people in that floor plans and setups. But you said on this that they do plan to. I was trying to get my head around the way that the spots would be put on the property. Are we talking of cutting them in like what happened over at, or what was granted over at like Maple Park Dental, where they cut them in off the street?
Well, we don't like to do that off the
Right.
street and have people backing in, especially like Cottonwood, because it's fairly higher traffic area. But what he was talking about a little bit off of Fifth Street, that he's got quite a bit of space between the actual sidewalk or his property line and where that first residential structure is. And he also has quite a little bit of space between the sidewalk and his residential structure off of Cottonwood. So we could reasonably see, because there's a 34-foot setback from Fifth Street and there's about a 50-foot setback from Cottonwood. So we could reasonably see a couple of parking stalls that you could actually get on site if that's what he wanted to do. But again, he wouldn't be required to do that by code if we rezoned it to a B3.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. I think everything he wants to do there is a really, really good service that he wants to provide. I'm just concerned about the neighbors parking. If you have classes going on or something like that, they're going to park as close as they can to wherever they're going to be. And if I own the house next door, I wouldn't want to come home from work and can't get in my driveway or can't park in front of my house. He's got that whole 87 feet in the back. Is there any way you could park cars back there off the alley? Or is that something that couldn't be done? Because I can see where if he has classes going on, you're going to have people parking all over the neighborhood.
Yeah, that would probably be reasonable also. I didn't even really think about that. But yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't put parking in there.
Okay. I'd be more in favor if the parking was off the street.
And again, I can ask him to do that, but if you do rezone it to a B3,
They have no control.
have no control to force that to happen.
And the other thing would be on street parking, we can't dictate who can park on the street and who can't. So I mean, they could still park in front of the neighbors, whether there's parking available somewhere else or not.
And I think there was a translation back there. Is he willing to consider parking towards the back of the property?
In what area?
Ese es un lote que está vacío, ¿no? Estamos ahí, podemos limpiar y podemos poner. Sí, sí.
He said that 87 foot in the back is an empty area that he could clean up and put some parking in there.
area right now, he thought about just dedicating it to the pupusa, to the restaurant.
Okay, so that area he was thinking about just dedicating to the restaurant, so that could be parking for that area.
Ed? Mr. Mayor, I guess I'm coming back to the building construction and the house and converting that into offices. I guess it sounds like he's gonna have multiple occupancies in the building, different businesses within the building. Sounds like they're gonna be more of an office as opposed to some kind of a retail shop. And I don't know how the floor plan is in the house. Is it single story or double story? I didn't drive by it, but I would imagine there's gonna have to be some accommodations made to the building, the house, to handle offices in there. Is that correct?
More than likely. So say, for example, he started today and he just had one business go in there and they didn't change anything as far as any type of walls, anything. They were just going to use a bedroom as an office space or something like that. I don't believe that they would have to do anything differently than maybe making a restroom ADA accessible, something like that. If that occurs and they're going to do any type of, say they want to do 3 businesses or something, I'm sure they're going to have to move walls. They're going to have to put in doors. They're going to have a separation of some sort. He'd have to get building permits at that point or some types of permits, and we would make sure that it would fit any type of commercial code.
So with that type of change in occupancy, is there possibility of requiring sprinklers?
It could be a possibility. I mean, if I don't know how large of a, yeah. I mean, there could be a possibility.
And I guess, just to be fair to this gentleman, is he aware of that? Is he aware of the fact that if he tries to change this into an office building, he may incur a lot of expense just to follow the statutes? Depends on what the occupancy is, so what it's used for.
He said that they have a large living room, so that's where most of their services would be done.
Said they have a large living room in the house currently, and that's where most of the services are anticipated to be completed at this time.
I just wanted to make sure that if he goes through all of this work and has his mindset on a business here that has different parts of the business, that he doesn't come to realize that he's got to spend a lot of money to modify the house.
We have worked with him quite a bit, both the building inspectors and I have with this restaurant. So I will make sure that we sit down with him before he does anything too extravagant and make sure he understands what needs to happen if he does try to convert it into multiple office spaces or something like that. Does that work? Okay.
And I guess if I could make one final comment, I just want to express my appreciation for your entrepreneurial activity in our town. That's very important, and I'm glad that you're doing that. And you're not asking for money to do it, so thank you.
He said that if there's a big issue with parking, then he just won't offer English or Spanish classes.
Okay, he said that if there's a big issue with parking, that he would modify his business plan and not offer large classes or things like that.
Ty?
Maybe just a quick question, Judy, is a parcel like this, can it have a split zoning?
We've done it before. I don't like to do that,
Right.
but yeah, we can do a meets and bounds description of the portion and make it, B3 and leave the other as residential, if that's what you prefer to do.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I was just trying to remember if that's on the table or not.
I don't like it. It's not
Right.
great planning, but yes, we
Right.
have done it in the past.
Pete?
Yeah, thinking of the scope and I'd like to hear from Mr. Takari, just briefly, the scope of this, because in all reality, the insurance agent could also teach English as a second language, could also teach other things. So it could just be a one-stop shop, to be perfectly honest with you.
True.
You know, I'm a city councilman and an insurance agent and a few other things, you know, so, you know, we're all looking to divide up this house, and it could just be a serviceable building that one or possibly two people just aid in selling some insurance and trying to teach folks that immigrated here a way to go about dealing with life in North Platte. So, but I would like to hear from Mr. Takari, if you don't mind. How do you envision the scope of the house that you're currently living in the future? Like, how many employees do you, and not that it matters, but do you see it as a one-stop shop, you know, one person, two person, helping the community?
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
Posiblemente. Sí, bueno, para comenzar, yo he estudiado en Business Technology y sé todo lo
To begin with, he has studied business technology,
sí, y entonces puedo yo comenzando, pero si viendo
so he could start off offering that type of service.
si hay mucha demanda,
If he sees a big demand in that area,
entonces tengo que ver ya una o dos personas que me ayuden
so he would probably hire 1 to 2 people that could hire him.
Sí, porque mi esposa ella está operando el negocio de
Because
pupusas
his wife will focus on the restaurant with the pupusas,
y yo me ocupo de la oficina de
and he will take
servicio
care
a
of
la
the
comunidad.
office, taking care of the community.
Ujú. Nosotros estamos retirados, pero queremos seguir trabajando
He said they are both retired, but they want to continue to
Sí.
work.
porque pensamos que mientras seguimos activos, estamos viviendo más.
Because they believe that if they maintain active, they will live longer.
Gracias.
Other questions or comments? Brad?
Judy, did I catch you right? You said it for every 300 square foot, you have to have one parking stall. Was that in a
That's in a
B2?
B2 district.
Okay.
Yes.
So I did some quick math on both of the properties, and it comes under just under 1,900 square, or just under 2,000 square feet. So it'd be about 7 parking stalls is what he would be required. I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm a big fan. I think the only concern is the parking. And let's say you have a class with 20 people on it, and then all of a sudden you're flooding the neighborhood with cars. Would you, because just south of here is B2, so it would be contiguous to do it as B2 as opposed to B3. Do you think he would be okay with an amendment to a B2 or what? Because I don't want to kill this project. I want this to happen.
Yeah,
But I also know once you zone it B3, it is what it is, and we don't get no say anymore. So I want to make sure that everybody is kind of.
It would fit in a B2 also. You're exactly right. B3 is across the street. B2 is also across the street to the south. And with the B2, then you would have that parking requirement on site. And so then we could require him to make a few parking stalls, especially in that back 80 feet that looks like we could probably get enough on that site.
By my math, it's 7 stalls, which he's already talking about doing anyway.
Yep.
I would like to have that requirement because that would help with some of that flooding.
And
So-
yeah, the B2 district would allow the same types of uses that are in a B3.
Gotcha. You okay with that? Okay, all right. I would make a motion to amend this to, instead of a B3, to a B2.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Vols, to amend this property to a B2 district rather than a B3 downtown commercial district. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir.
We have a motion by Garrick, second by Vols. Any discussion on the amendment? Ed?
Mr. Mayor, so what other changes does that make in relationship to this property besides parking?
Parking setback requirements, so it would, if he wanted to do an addition, he'd have to make sure that he meets the setback requirements because there's larger setback requirements in a B2 district. There's some landscaping requirements in a B2 district, but other than that, it would be the same with the parking.
And the other question that I have, with the proposed parking stalls here, is that area deep enough that the cars can park so they're not on the sidewalk?
We're gonna have to look at that, get an actual, site plan drawn, not by hand, even though he did a beautiful job. We'll have to look at that, through our maps and see how many parking stalls that we can legitimately get on there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
One other question, on a B2, does he have to have a conditional use permit to have it as his residence also?
Well, what his plan is to not be a residence. So, I would assume we'd give him a little bit of time, before we would do that. But yes, technically, in order to live in a B2, you do have to have a conditional use permit. But, I would hope that we would be okay with giving him a little time
I
to
think so.
get things arranged.
Ty?
So this procedural question, so if we would approve this amendment, then we would still be back to just a first reading, which would normally require 3, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Would then between first reading, if it was approved on first reading, between that and second reading, would that be where the site plan would fall into the mix prior to any final readings, or what, how would you see
With
that
the
working
parking?
procedure? Yeah.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
probably get one back here with the parking
Okay.
on it.
Or at least by a third reading, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's just something procedurally I think we should keep our eye on with. Okay, thank you.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Ed?
Back to the conditional use permit. And I understand we want to give him the time, but does it make sense to just grant the conditional use permit right now and get it taken care of?
You'll have to go through a huge procedure again. We'll have to go back to planning commission. And if he's not going to be there for any length of time, I really wouldn't
Okay,
suggest that we do that.
okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on the proposed amendment? Calling the question on the proposed amendment. Amendment is passed. It's now a B2 district. Any further discussion on the original item as amended to a B2 district? Calling the question on the item as amended. Item passes as amended. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think the right term would be muchas gracias. Right? Okay, there we go. Item number 11, approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of 14 warrants to the First Interstate Bank totaling $7,180,242.18 to pay approved claims and referring to and incorporating the terms and conditions of ordinance number 3874 relating to warrant financing.
Move to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of 14 warrants as presented in the materials.
Second.
Motion by Garrick, second by Reeker. Any discussion on item number 11? Seeing none, calling the question on item number 11, please. Item number 11 is passed. Item number 12, discuss, this is just a discussion, no action will be taken on this item. Discuss proposal from Dawson Public Power regarding electrical service rights for customers located south of State Farm Road between the North Platte Hydro Facility and Old Highway 83. Lane, you want to start? Or give me just a second. Go ahead, Lane.
You have in your packet a letter from Dawson asking, they need to move a transmission line. And so that map shows you where their existing line is and where they'd like to move it, which is in our service territory for electrical. You have a letter asking for that. With that change, they're asking to also take, we have about 5 or 6 customers in that area. Take them from our customer base to their customer base. There's some things they have to do to that. I'd like them to present, and then we also have our electrical department here to talk about that as well. So that's kind of in a nutshell. So Aaron or whoever
Okay.
from Dawson.
Aaron Edwards with Dawson Public Power.
So basically what this is we are doing the final phase of our 69,000 volt conversion for this line. It runs out through the pasture, and one of the landowners out there is doing a bunch of excavation using all the dirt for fill, like it's sustainable beef and stuff. So our power lines are now on big knobs, and we need to find a different line route. We can't move south because NPPD's line there, so our next option is to try to work with the city and move our line north to this proposed route. This line used to be one of Dawson's lines, and we gave it away in 2015. And we gave it to you guys for nothing. We'd just like to utilize that line route. We'd like to serve the customers if it's going to be our line. If not a huge deal, but that would be ideal. Looking at long-term, talking to Gary Pearson and stuff, any of the economic development in that area shouldn't be affected. Anything that you guys would be seeing for growth should be served from the line that you guys have along State Farm. Should be pretty cut and dry.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Anybody have any questions for Aaron while he's standing there?
Yeah, real quick.
Yes, Ty.
Roughly how many customers would that affect today?
I believe there are 8 residential and 2 irrigation wells.
And then I'm not even going to use the right lingo here or anything, so bear with me, but by shifting that line direction, what is it, just the addition, you're just running additional lines then the other direction to get to the connection points that are there today?
So basically where your guys' line is at now, where the city of North Platte's line is, we'd put really tall poles there. So we'd have the high voltage on the top and low voltage on the bottom, and utilize one path for all the power lines is what we're shooting for.
Okay.
And I want to be clear, I guess we're not asking to take this service territory away. We would just like you to waive the customers for us to be able to serve them electrically.
Okay. So if, to get my directions right, so if this is running east and west,
yes,
are you going to have to build stuff that's not there today going north and south to pick up the gap?
No.
Okay.
No. So like I said, this
there.
used to be our line anyway.
Okay.
So if you look on the map, right on the east side of the right side of that red kind of squiggly line, there's an open spot there. There's still wires there, but it's just cut open. So literally all we have to do is put jumpers in, and we could energize all of that line.
Okay.
Obviously the transformers are the wrong voltage, so you guys would be able to take those down and take those back, and we'd have to put up our own, but.
Okay, thanks.
There's a couple possibilities here. I'll let Scott kind of go into more detail. I think over by the fairgrounds, we have kind of a similar situation where we actually share poles, if I'm correct. And so, Scott, I guess I'll let you just kind of talk a little bit on this.
All right, Scott Standage, Electric Superintendent for the City of North Platte. I understand what their issue is of having to build a different transmission line because of the excavation of the dirt. I disagree with them taking where we have our pole line now. They want to put their pole line in. If they want to build tall poles, leave us as underbuild. I have no problem with that either. And we can still continue to feed the customers that we have there now. I just worry about that area because, I mean, it's a great area to develop. As if Industrial Park fills up, I would assume that it's going to go south because electricity right there is a great place to get. And I don't know why they would not let us go underneath, because we've done it out on Ranch House Road. We have Lakeview and Ranch House Road. We have a line that we are on underbuild with them now. So it's an option. I mean, it can be done.
Do we have any questions go ahead.
The customers that they want are south of State Farm Road?
Correct.
Okay. And where is the line at that the city quits taking care of and they pick it up?
It's that red squiggly line, I think. Well, I'm kind of colorblind, but I'm thinking
The
it's that
squiggly
red
line
squiggly
is-
line that goes across over to the old Highway 83.
Okay.
So basically, your large transmission line would be in the same route as where our existing line is. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would be, I guess, what we call sub T with underbuild. So there's all kinds of that running through the city of North Platte already, where it's like 60-foot poles, and the top 4 wires are the
the sub T, and then the ones on cross arms is the distribution that serves the customers.
Go ahead, Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In that scenario then, Scott and Aaron, who maintains the lines?
Well, their line would be the top one and ours would be the bottom one. And if their transmission line would down, they'd have to come out and fix it. And I don't feel it should be a cost to us because we already have a distribution line through there. So they would need to put the poles in and string the new line if they wanted it on the new poles. I mean, we have the area now, so you guys always have the option to tell them no, you know, and then they have to look somewhere completely different. So I don't think it's asking too much to have them build a new line for our distribution where our line is now, but on taller poles.
I think I understand that part, Scott. So what happens if we have a ice storm come through and the line's down?
Well, we would have to get together. They'd take care of theirs and we would take care of ours.
Okay. So you,
And that would all be part of an agreement.
Right.
And
that's
we,
all.
and we work with neighboring power districts all the time, so that's not a big deal to the power side of things.
And I guess if I could, the main reason we have this as a discussion item tonight is so they know how to move forward, because they have to then go and get, the Power Review Board actually has to approve it after we reach some kind of agreement. So this is basically talking about what is the best interest for both parties tonight.
Right. So what we want is to know whether or not we can even start looking at trying to design a power line. That's all. That's what my question for today is this something that you guys would even entertain, that we can proceed with the engineering side of design?
I could see it could be mutually beneficial for the city and for Dawson. And I don't know if this pertains, so I wouldn't be opposed to this sharing lines. I do see future growth growing to the south of State Farm Road, kind of like what you indicated, Scott. So I would be less inclined to give away customers, you know, in there for future growth. But as far as sharing the power lines and you guys up top, North Platte down at below.
And we do that in several other communities, so that wouldn't.
I think that makes
the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that makes really good sense, and you're getting economies of scale.
Yep.
You know, our poles might be going bad in the next 10 years. Who knows?
Yeah,
So,
well, they were theirs originally.
yeah.
They were bad. Yeah. And part of the reason that I guess, you know, that I would be asking for all of it is that way, if we have to work on the top stuff, we don't have to shut off the bottom lines for the city, or, you know, have them come out and shut stuff off. If it's all ours, it was just easier for us to work on. So that's all stuff that we definitely need to sit down and talk about. This was just bring it to you guys and see if we could work out a deal on the line route. Yeah. That's what the topic is.
Brad?
So is this a similar situation where if someone wants to put a cell phone tower on somebody's land, there's a rental agreement that is made?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know how that would actually work if they own the poles.
So we do have attachment agreements that we could waive if that was something that would be an option.
Because this is actually in our service area.
Right.
So you guys actually hold the trump card. I mean,
Yes.
You can basically ask.
I'm groveling.
For them to go ahead and build
Hence
us
my
a line.
question.
Yes.
So,
And one of the other options would be if we owned all of it, we could pay you guys a lease payment on those customers, would be something else. But that's a whole, like I said, that's a conversation that could be had at a
I
different
just
time.
think it'd be really important for us to have that underbuilt, because if we get big businesses that come in there, we like to loop feed everything so they can feed from both ways. So this would be a feed from the south, and we also have State Farm where we could come across and feed them from the north and tie it all together through there. If we don't have anything there, then we're gonna have to come clear back to State Farm eventually.
so you think the benefit isn't a monetary lease agreement? You think it's more of in the redundancy and the building up of that
Yes,
area?
I actually think that in the future, this will be developed into something pretty big, and it's set in a great spot for us to be able to service that area, which with dual feeds would just work better.
Gotcha. Just letting you off the hook there. And
Hey, no, that's not. We need to figure out where we can put poles and in a hurry. So that's
Scott, in reference to the customers, is there a number if we were to do some sort of a percentage or an increase on if Dawson were to take over our customers in that area and they pay us a royalty or whatever the proper term is there a number that makes sense to where then we don't have to service that area, or is that something you're not interested in at all?
I am not interested in it as the electric superintendent, because I think the more customers who get, the better off we're gonna be, and especially in that area. I mean, you could always take their load that they take and take it times a yearly amount and shoot them a price for a yearly lease or whatever.
Well, couldn't you do it on an increase? You know, the customer pays X and you add an
See,
extra 12% to it or something
The
along those
customers
lines.
may not want to do that because we're cheaper than Dawson now.
Oh,
On the residential side.
I didn't say those. I said
I
that.
didn't mean to start a trade argument. That is not what I was going. Okay, thank you. That answered my question.
Could I get clarification on a couple things? So if we were to, let's say today we were to annex more land and do commercial development right in this area, would the infrastructure the city has in place be good for that, and would it be long lasting, or what? In other words, is the line that they're talking about bigger and better and would help with that or not? If we were to commercially develop that area.
It could be. Yeah, I guess the only good thing you got going for that line is the easement. Because if we had something big go through there, we'd have to put in, bigger lines and now most generally we underground everything, so we would tie in one side to the other. But we would have to definitely upgrade what's there.
I mean, is what you guys are proposing assist with that or not?
This is me assuming that we would do our typical build, which is 4-aught T2 for the sub T and 1-aught T2 for the underbuild.
And see, we would probably recommend that they did the 4-aught
for both. And if the city was, I'm assuming, my boss and general manager are sitting here, so they would make the decisions, but I'm assuming that if the city was to pitch in on part of that for those differences, we would definitely consider it.
And that's for you guys to decide.
It's kind of entertaining watching you two negotiate.
Are there ever agreements where if a city does something like this and you guys install it, where the city can call it back? And there's a formula to where we'd be at about where we would be cost neutral if we wouldn't have entered into any type of agreement?
Yes. I guess Gwen can go into that, our general manager.
Gwen Couch, General Manager for Dawson Public Power District. I've worked for him for 29 years. I can tell you that the benefit of this would be big for both sides. And of course, we would work with you on doing whatever you need to do. If you're bringing in large commercial, there are agreements that can be made where you're taking service off of our 69. And I've been there 29 years, and we've been trying to build this loop for all of that 29 years. And this is the last section.
Thank you.
Last 2 miles.
Yes.
It's always the last mile is always the hardest.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Okay, we're not voting here, but I'm assuming that the council is okay with receiving a proposal from Dawson
Set up a time to
on how we might
discuss
go
this and at
forward.
least allow us to proceed with our engineering side of things so we can figure out
I
what it's
would-
actually going to take to build this line.
I would say, Aaron, you and Scott work on what makes sense for both parties and then come back with a proposal. That
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to come up with a proposal, line and what size. Right now. Yeah, so yeah,
Looking at stuff.
main thing was just, we let them build it where our line is now, and we're just under there, but.
The top 4 wires primarily is what we're after. So if we can do that with, or get permission to at least start the engineering side of it, then that's what we're after.
Okay, does that work for you two over there? Okay,
Appreciate it, guys.
thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 13, approve the claims.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we pay the bills.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols, calling the question and approving the claims. Claims are paid. Public agenda request. We respect our city employees. Request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired to public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. If anyone has a public agenda request item, please approach the microphone and let us know what that is. It would appear that we do not have one. I have one quick announcement for the council. On April 30th, at 9 a.m. We'll send out invitations for you, but just so you know, we'll have a wreath laying ceremony at the Veterans Memorial. We are entering into the community partnership program with the Nebraska Army National Guard, and they will be here all day doing a whole variety of things, and you'll all have invitations and agendas to attend those things. It's a nice program. The National Guard is doing outreach. They'll be doing outreach to students and local community, lots of some nice things. So April 30th, 9 a.m. is the wreath laying ceremony at the Veterans Memorial. There are other things that will come along with that. So, Mr. Reeker.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols to adjourn, calling the question on adjournment. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I didn't.